Dirt and rocks scattered as Elara razor. Vance hit the ground like a sack of bricks. The air rushed from her lungs as she tumbled across the damp, moss-covered earth of the alien planet. Artificial gravity from the alien transport dissipated, leaving her under the oppressive pull of this celestial body's natural force. Overhead, the sky burned crimson and violet, the setting sun casting eerie shadows through a twisted jungle of colossal, jagged flora. The distinct whine of the Rali dropship echoed as it retreated, its thrusters humming like a swarm of mechanical wasps hurrying back to their hive. She was alone, or so they thought. "Run, human!" a guttural voice crackled from an unseen speaker. Elara gritted her teeth, forcing herself to her feet. Muscles screamed in protest from the brutal beating she'd endured aboard their monstrous ship. The Rali hadn't exactly rolled out the red carpet when they snatched her from her outpost. A routine patrol, a flash of energy, then nothing but darkness. When she awoke, she was in chains. They paraded her before their warriors, jeering, laughing, and placing bets on how long she'd last. A hunt, that's what this was. Elara clenched her fists, assessing her situation. No weapons, no gear, just the sweat-soaked thermal underlayer and tactical pants she'd been wearing when captured. She touched her lip, split wide open. Ribs were likely bruised, maybe cracked, but nothing broken enough to slow her down. Through the thick, humid air, she heard clicks and growls, sounds of amusement and arrogance. The Rali thought this was sport, a grand event where they, the galaxy's greatest hunters, would prove their dominance. She'd overheard one of them boasting, "We have crushed 1,000 species. Humans will be no different." Elara smirked. "Fools." Elara took off, her tactical boots making barely a whisper on the damp jungle floor. The air reeked of sulfur and wet stone, thick with the chirping and chittering of alien life. High above, a colossal serpent slithered through the canopy, its translucent skin reflecting the twilight sky's colors. She had no time to admire this alien ecosystem. The Rali would be watching, tracking her every move. They wouldn't strike immediately. No, they relished the chase. That was their first mistake. Elara moved fast, cataloging details as she ran. Uneven ground, slick moss, strange fibrous vines twisting around trees as thick as battleship hulls. She spotted a ridge ahead, immediately accelerating, scrambling up the rocks with practiced ease. She had spent years in the Black Ops division of the Terran Armed Forces, operating in the galaxy's most hostile environments. This wasn't a hunt. This was training. Reaching the ridge top, Elara swiftly concealed herself in the undergrowth, regulating her breathing. Silence stretched for nearly a minute before she heard them. Light footsteps, unnaturally quick, rustling through the low brush. She counted 3, maybe 4. The Rali moved like predators, low to the ground, elongated limbs perfect for rapid sprints, their reflective eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, scanning for movement. Elara watched as the first Rali crept forward, sleek obsidian armor blending seamlessly with the foliage. It carried a razor-edged hunting spear, its curved blade humming with energy. The Rali warrior sniffed the air, its slit-like nostrils flaring. They were toying with her. She smirked. They had no idea what game they were playing. The Rali tilted its head, a fraction of a second too late. Elara launched herself from above, her entire weight crashing onto its shoulders. The Rali shrieked in terror, clawed hands flailing wildly. But she was already moving, twisting its spear arm at a brutal angle. The sickening crack of a dislocated shoulder filled the air before it could react. She ripped the weapon from its grasp and slammed the blunt end into its throat. A choked gurgle, then silence. She crouched, steadying her breath. The Rali prided themselves on being elite warriors, but their arrogance made them predictable. They hadn't expected her to fight back. Elara snatched the fallen warrior's sidearm, a sleek, curved pistol with glowing red etchings. She'd seen these before. Plasma-based, high energy yield, limited shots. She powered it on with a flick of her thumb and melted into the shadows, just as the second Rayleigh emerged. Jax, the alien, prodded his fallen comrade with a booted foot. Elara pulled the trigger. A sizzling snap of energy, and a hole the size of a dinner plate seared through Jax's chest. 2 down. The third and fourth warriors unleashed piercing war cries, their spears igniting with jagged arcs of energy. Elara bolted, weaving through the trees as they gave chase. The jungle blurred past her, sweat trickling down her brow. She fired over her shoulder, hitting nothing but foliage. The ground sloped downwards ahead, a deep ravine, maybe 15 meters across. At the bottom, a churning river of dark, bubbling liquid. Without hesitation, Elara sprinted towards the edge and leaped. For a brief, weightless moment, she was airborne, the roar of the alien river filling her ears. Then impact. She slammed into the opposite ledge, her fingers digging into the loose soil. The Rayleigh skidded to a halt behind her, growling in frustration. Coward, one barked, baring rows of serrated teeth. Elara grinned and pointed her stolen pistol at them. Smile for the camera, uglies. She fired. The plasma bolt struck the unstable rock beneath them. The ground fractured. The Rayleigh barely had time to react before the entire ledge collapsed beneath their feet, sending them plummeting into the river below. Elara didn't linger to watch them drown. She pushed forward, deeper into the jungle, needing to find shelter, regroup, and plan her next move. The Rayleigh wouldn't take this lightly. She was no longer just prey, she was a problem. Ahead, a faint glimmer caught her eye, a wreckage site, old, partially buried under thick vines. Her pulse quickened. A way off this rock, or just another trap? She had no choice but to find out. The hunt wasn't over yet. It was just getting started. The signal pulsed through the dark, vast emptiness of space, a single, desperate cry clawing its way across the void. It was raw, a burst of data compressed into tight, urgent packets, a distress beacon piggybacked onto an alien frequency. Any normal transmission would have been snuffed out the second it touched the Rayleigh network, but this wasn't normal. This was Elara Razor Vance. Inside the bridge of the Hell's Gambit, a heavily modified Terran gunship, Sergeant Boomer Hammer Briggs reclined in the pilot's seat, boots propped up on the dash, the smell of stale coffee and half-eaten ration bars lingering in the recycled air. He was halfway through a die-hard rerun when the distress beacon cut through the static. Karen, the ship's onboard AI, flickered into existence beside him, her holographic form materializing as an unimpressed middle-aged woman with reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose. Boomer, I know your brain operates at the speed of rock and molasses, but even you should be able to tell when we're receiving an unauthorized transmission. Boomer smirked, rubbing a hand over his unshaven jaw. Karen, you wound me. What's got your circuits in a twist? The AI's expression didn't change as she ran the signal through the ship's decryption software. Then her synthetic voice dropped its usual sarcasm. It's from Elara Vance. Boomer's feet hit the floor. His entire body went rigid. The name burned like a shot of cheap whiskey straight to the gut. He leaned forward, eyes locked on the blinking distress call. The woman he thought was dead, the woman the Rayleigh had taken, was still alive. He slammed the comm panel. Vasquez. Woo. Get your asses in here now. Within moments, Lieutenant Marco Squibb, Vasquez, and Dr. Sam Wu jogged onto the bridge. Vasquez, built like a man who had made every bad decision and somehow walked away grinning, had a deck of cards in one hand and a half-eaten protein bar in the other. Wu, their tech specialist, adjusted his glasses, already scrolling through data on his tablet. What's the emergency? Vasquez asked, flipping a card absent-mindedly between his fingers. Boomer jabbed a finger at the console. It's Elara. She's alive. Wu's fingers froze over his screen. Vasquez stopped chewing for a heartbeat. The bridge fell silent. Karen, ever pragmatic, broke the tension. According to this data, she's on Rali Prime, the heart of their empire. The transmission is piggybacking off their emergency comm system, meaning she hijacked their own signal to send it. We'll let out a low whistle. That's insane. Boomer's lips curled into a grin. That's Elara. Vasquez leaned against the console, his easy demeanor sharpening into something more focused. She's alive, but she won't be for long if we don't move. We all know what the Rayleigh do to their prey. Wu's fingers flew over the console. I'm already pulling up planetary schematics, but this place isn't just some backwater jungle moon. We're talking heavily fortified, state-of-the-art security, and enough warships in orbit to make the Battle of Europa look like a bar fight. Boomer cracked his knuckles. Then we better make it one hell of a bar fight. Karen sighed. And here I was hoping to finally enjoy a quiet evening of ship maintenance. Boomer ignored her and turned to Vasquez. Get Brick. We're pulling the squad together. Vasquez arched a brow. You really think we can pull this off? Boomer's grin widened. Elara's waiting on us. What do you think? The Hell's Gambit tore through the void, its engines roaring as it set course for Rayleigh Prime. The squad assembled in the war room, the space cluttered with half-disassembled weapons, scattered armor plating, and a holomap displaying their target. Benny Boulder Kowalski, their resident heavy gunner, a man built like an ancient Terran bulldozer, leaned against a crate, arms crossed. We're storming the Rayleigh homeworld? Ballsy, I like it. Wu adjusted his glasses. I should remind everyone that this plan has a success rate of approximately 4%. Boomer clapped a hand on his shoulder. That's 4 times better than we usually get. Karen's voice chimed in. I cannot stress this enough. This is a terrible idea. Vasquez shuffled his cards, smirking. Yeah, but it's our kind of terrible. Wu sighed. Fine. I've been meaning to test a new virus that should temporarily scramble their security grids, but it'll only give us a window of about 15 minutes before their systems reboot. Boomer nodded. 15 minutes is plenty of time to raise hell. Brick hoisted a massive railgun onto his shoulder. Tell me the plan involves lots of explosions. Boomer smirked. Brick, buddy, when do my plans not involve explosions? Wu tapped at the holomap, bringing up a schematic of a sprawling fortress surrounded by dense jungle. Elara's beacon originated from here. If she's still alive, that's where they'll be keeping her. Security is tight. Patrolling sentries, automated turrets, and an entire city of Rayleigh who'd love to rip us apart. Boomer cracked his neck. So, a normal Tuesday. Vasquez grinned. I say we go in loud. Guns blazing, explosions, the usual whoop-de-doo. Wu pinched the bridge of his nose. Or, and hear me out, we try a tactical approach. Karen cut in. I am willing to compromise. We go in quiet, but leave loudly. Boomer pointed at the AI. Now that's a plan I can get behind. Wu rolled his eyes. Fine, I'll handle the hacking. Brick, you focus on suppressing fire. Vasquez, you take high ground, cover our exit. Boomer, you're in charge of not getting us all killed. Boomer grinned. I love it when a plan comes together. As the Hell's Gambit neared the planet, the ship's hull trembled against the gravitational pull. Boomer gripped the controls, guiding them through the atmosphere as streaks of fire licked the edges of the viewport. Below, Rayleigh Prime stretched vast and unwelcoming, a tangled jungle of twisted metal and organic architecture pulsing with unnatural light. Karen's voice crackled over the intercom. Gentlemen, I would like to remind you that this is, in fact, a suicide mission. Vasquez chuckled. She says that like we haven't done worse. Boomer pushed the ship into a controlled descent, weaving through layers of automated defenses, each one narrowly missing their hull by inches. Wu's fingers danced across his console, bypassing detection systems with almost casual ease. Landing zone in sight. Boomer announced. Hold on to your butts. The ship skidded to a halt within a clearing, steam hissing from its vents. The ramp lowered, and the team moved like a well-oiled machine, their boots crunching against the alien terrain, weapons primed, hearts steady. The jungle around them pulsed with an eerie bioluminescence, casting strange shadows that shifted as if alive. In the distance, the fortress loomed, a monolith of alien arrogance. Boomer exhaled, gripping his rifle tight. "All right, boys, let's bring our girl home." Brick chambered a round in his railgun. "And blow some shit up while we're at it." Wu adjusted his visor, scanning the perimeter. "Let's just try not to die." Vasquez cracked his knuckles. "No promises." Karen's voice whispered in their comms, dry as ever. "I'll prepare your eulogies." Boomer smirked. "Karen, sweetheart, you should know by now, we don't die easy." As they moved into the jungle, the shadows swallowed them whole. The Rayleigh had no idea what was coming for them, but they would soon, because the humans weren't the hunted anymore. They were the hunters. The first explosion ripped through the Rayleigh fortress like a Stargate supernova. The sky flashed molten orange, and the ground trembled as a fireball blossomed into the humid night air. The shockwave sent debris spiraling through the dense jungle, shattering the once pristine hunting grounds into a smoldering battlefield. Elara Razor, Vance crouched behind a thick, jagged outcrop of alien stone, gripping a stolen plasma rifle. The weapon hummed against her fingers, its energy core vibrating with barely contained power. She barely had time to process the sudden, glorious carnage before her calm crackled to life. "Hey Razor, you miss us?" Boomer's voice came through, smug as ever. Elara smirked, exhaling a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Took you long enough. Thought I was going to have to overthrow this empire on my own." "Wouldn't put it past you," Vasquez chimed in, his tone light despite the chaos. "But we figured you might want some company for the grand finale." Another explosion split the air, followed by the rapid staccato of railgun fire. Brick's deep, booming laughter rolled through the comms. "Oh man, I forgot how much I love tearing these lizard bastards apart." Elara peered over her cover, surveying the war zone that had once been a hunting preserve. The Rayleigh were in full panic mode, their arrogance turned to pure, unfiltered terror. Warriors scrambled to regroup, barking orders in their guttural tongue, but it was already too late. The humans had turned their pristine trophy grounds into a massacre. The fortress, a sprawling construct of sleek organic metal, loomed in the distance. Defensive turrets swiveled wildly, scanning for targets. But Wu's virus had worked like a charm. Their systems were blind, their communications scrambled. Elara bolted from cover, weaving through the wreckage as energy bolts sizzled past her. A Rayleigh warrior lunged from the side, its spear humming with deadly electricity. She twisted at the last second, sidestepping the strike, then drove the butt of her rifle into its throat. The alien gurgled, stumbling back, but she was already moving, slamming a boot into its chest and sending it sprawling. One clean shot between the eyes, and it stopped moving. She still got it. Boomer whistled. "Less talk, more killing." Elara shot back. From his perch high above the battlefield, Vasquez lined up a shot with his sniper rifle, his visor locked onto a Rayleigh officer barking desperate commands to his troops. "You guys ever notice how these bastards get real quiet when their leader's brain meets open air?" A crack of energy fire, and the officer's skull erupted in a mist of violet blood. Elara didn't wait to see the fallout. She was already sprinting toward the fortress entrance, her heart pounding. Every fiber of her being screamed that she should be dead already, but here she was, alive and on the warpath. Inside the fortress, the Rayleigh warlords were in utter disarray. Overlord Zath, their supreme commander, loomed over a trembling officer, his clawed hands flexing in frustration. His ornate armor gleamed under the emergency lights, his slitted eyes burning with disbelief. "Humans," he hissed, his voice laced with disdain. This was supposed to be a simple culling. The officer stammered, his tail lashing anxiously. They fight like demons, Overlord. Our sentries are falling like prey. Zatha's claws carved deep gouges into the table before him. Silence. His voice was low, deadly. The only prey here are those too weak to adapt. Humans are insects, scavengers. How is it that they are? Before the officer could respond, the blast doors to the war chamber exploded inward. The force sent Rali guards tumbling, the air filling with the acrid scent of burning metal. Elara stepped through the smoke, rifle in one hand, a stolen Rali energy sword in the other. Her team flanked her, Boomer with his shotgun, Vasquez reloading his sniper rifle, Wu tapping away on his wrist display, and Brick hoisting his railgun like a battering ram. Zyra Katha's eyes narrowed. You, Elara. Elara tilted her head, mock surprise on her face. Wow, you actually remember me? I feel special. The warlord's nostrils flared. You should feel honored to die by my hand. Human. Boomer snorted. Man, you guys really love monologuing. Elara raised her sword, its edges glowing with stolen alien energy. Enough talk, Zath. Zath let out an enraged roar and charged, his massive form moving with terrifying speed. Elara met him head-on, blades clashing in a shower of sparks. The warlord's strength was monstrous, his blows heavy enough to rattle her bones. But Elara was faster, meaner, and most importantly, pissed off. The fight was brutal, a dance of steel and energy. Zath swung wide, and Elara ducked, rolling beneath the arc and slashing at his exposed side. The warlord snarled as the blade cut deep, violet blood dripping onto the sleek floors. Vasquez, watching from the sidelines, nudged Wu. I bet 20 credits she kills him in the next 2 minutes. Wu barely glanced up. You still owe me 50 from the last bet. Elara sidestepped another wild swing, then surged forward, driving her blade into Zatha's chest. The warlord gasped, his towering form trembling as he stared down at the weapon impaling him. She twisted the blade. Game over, lizard. With a final, shuddering breath, Zath collapsed. The great Rali overlord, the self-proclaimed apex predator, was dead at her feet. Silence stretched through the chamber, then Boomer clapped his hands together. Welp, that was satisfying. Wu tapped his wrist display. Broadcasting now, across the Rali Empire. Screens flickered to life, hijacked by Wu's signal. Every military outpost, every royal chamber, every colony watched in horror as their greatest warrior fell. The message was clear. Humans weren't prey. They were the nightmare you never saw coming. Panic erupted across the empire. Rali generals barked conflicting orders. Some called for immediate retaliation, but others hesitated. The sight of their overlord lifeless and broken shattered their illusion of superiority. Elara wiped the blood off her blade and sheathed it. We need to move. Their fleets will be scrambling soon. Boomer grinned. Yeah, but I think we just made history. Wu's screen beeped. Correction, we just made legend. Outside, chaos reigned. Rali soldiers abandoned their posts, their morale crumbling. Some fled into the wilderness, unwilling to face the wrath of creatures who fought with the fury of gods. The Hell's Gambit awaited them, its engines roaring, ready to burn skyward. As the squad boarded, Elara took one last look at the battlefield. The Rali Empire had thought itself untouchable. Tonight, they had learned otherwise. Boomer nudged her. So, drinks on me? Elara exhaled, shaking her head with a small, tired smile. You better believe it. As the gunship lifted off, streaking into the night, the legend of humanity's vengeance spread like wildfire. The galaxy would never be the same again. The Rali Empire had spent centuries weaving an illusion, one of superiority, invincibility, and divine right over lesser species. That illusion shattered the moment Elara Vance drove a stolen alien blade into the chest of their overlord. Across the stars, Millions of Rayleigh watched in stunned silence as the broadcast of their leader's demise played on an endless loop, an inescapable reminder that the apex predators had misjudged their prey. By the time the Hell's Gambit roared through the atmosphere, leaving a world of chaos in its wake, the Empire was already cracking at the seams. Every warlord who had once basked in the confidence of their dominion now questioned the impossible. Had they been wrong about humans? Had they underestimated the one species they deemed insignificant? Inside the ship, the crew sat in stunned, adrenaline-soaked silence as the planet shrank beneath them. Elara stood near the viewport, her fingers tightening around the edge of the console. She could still feel the heat of the battlefield, the weight of the fight pressing against her ribs like phantom bruises. The kill had been necessary, satisfying even, but she knew better than to think this was over. Boomer kicked back in his seat, his grin splitting his face. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I think we just became public enemy number one. Vasquez snorted, flicking a card between his fingers. More like public nightmare number one. These lizard freaks are never going to sleep again. Wu's fingers danced over his console, processing real-time data from intercepted Rayleigh transmissions. His face remained unreadable, but the tension in his jaw said everything. You might want to hold off on the celebration. Their central command is imploding, but that doesn't mean they're out of the fight. Brick cracked his knuckles, leaning forward. Let him come. We just wiped their noses in the dirt. You really think they got anything left to throw at us? Wu shook his head. Maybe not at us, but they're already fighting each other. Elara turned. What do you mean? Wu pulled up a series of live feeds from various Rayleigh worlds. Civil unrest was spreading like wildfire. The younger generations, the ones who had grown up believing in their empire's unshakable power, were losing faith. Some warlords doubled down, calling for immediate retaliation, for the extermination of humanity at all costs. Others hesitated, realizing that if humans had managed to do this, then perhaps they weren't the weak prey they had been led to believe. Vasquez let out a low whistle. Damn, we didn't just kill their leader, we kicked over the whole anthill. Boomer propped his boots up, and here I was worried we wouldn't leave a lasting impression. Elara exhaled, rubbing the back of her neck. She had spent years fighting, years enduring the brutality of war, but this was something new, a shift in the balance of power so profound it could change the course of history. The Rayleigh had ruled through fear. Now, for the first time, they were the ones afraid. Karen's voice broke through the calms, her usual sarcasm tinged with something almost resembling admiration. I have just finished sifting through thousands of intercepted messages, and I must say, I have never seen an entire empire go through all 5 stages of grief this quickly. It's almost artistic. Elara smirked. What's the general consensus? Karen hummed. Well, a large faction wants to burn Earth to the ground, but there's an equally large number of them who have no intention of fighting humans ever again. Some are even pushing for peace negotiations. Personally, I'd recommend taking the win while they're too confused to react properly. Boomer stretched, cracking his back. And we get to be the ambassadors of peace now? That's funny. Wu scoffed. More like the ambassadors of mess with us and see what happens. Elara turned back to the viewport, watching the distant stars blur as they jumped into hyperspace. She had spent days surviving on that cursed planet, outnumbered, hunted, left for dead. Now the hunters were running scared, and every fiber of her being told her this was only the beginning. The problem with shattering an empire wasn't just the chaos it created, it was the vacuum left behind. Something always filled it. Vasquez spun a card between his fingers, glancing at Elara. So boss, what's next? We take the payday and disappear, or are we about to make ourselves even bigger legends? Brick grinned. I vote we double down. Let him know humans don't play games. Wu sighed. You guys do realize we just painted a giant target on our backs, right? I'd rather not have every bounty hunter in the galaxy gunning for us. Boomer chimed in. Come on. Woo! Think of all the fun we'd miss. Elara let the conversation wash over her, her mind already calculating the possibilities. She had been fighting to survive. Now, for the first time, she had the upper hand. The Rali Empire was vulnerable, and more importantly, they knew it. Karen's voice chimed in. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, there's an incoming transmission from a Rali senator. Looks like someone wants to talk terms. Vasquez laughed. Oh man, this I gotta hear. Elara rolled her shoulders, already preparing herself for whatever negotiation awaited them. She wasn't naive enough to believe the Rayleigh would surrender outright, but they had learned a valuable lesson. Humans weren't just survivors. They were the thing that came for you when you thought you were safe. She took a deep breath and stepped toward the console, her team at her back. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much bigger.